violent storm swept through the Rome, Italy, unleashed torrential rain, thunder and gale force winds and left parts of the capital flooded and paralyzed it. Within a minute, narrow cobblestone streets turned into raging rivers, cars were submerged and public transport ground to the hail. It was terrified. The sky turned completely black, said Francesco Bianchi, a resident near the Vatican. The wind howled like a jet engine, and lightning struck so close it shook the windows. The storm struck during the rush hour, catching thousands of communities of guard. Firefighters received over 400 emergency calls for flooded homes. Downed trees and stranded motorists. It is a Trastevere and Ostia district. Strong winds tore off roof, titles and trooped scooters, while several metro stations were forced to close due to the rising water levels. Meteorologists described the storm as one of the most intense in recent years. Flooded a sharp crash between the humid African air and the cold Atlantic currents of the central Italy. Historic landmarks were not spared. In the central historic water spirit in the Pisa's and Courtyard Garden, with the coffees and markers suffered damage in a waiting in outdoor setting. Local farmers reported significant crop losses in Lilezzo, with a greenhouse and vineyard battered by ice. Social media exploded with the dramatic footage, hail bouncing off car, fountains of overwhelmed, and streets turned into icy rivers. Residents were left shaken yet resilient. We have weathered many storms, but this one felt apocalyptic. Authorities have urged caution by the city begin cleaning up. Experts warned that such extreme weather events are becoming more frequent due to climate change, highlighting Rome's vulnerability to sudden destructive storm. The storm has left the city both in a shaken, the stark reminder that even the eternal city is one of the mercy of nature fury.
Questo è un grosso problema, molto grosso. Porta via il negozio qua, adesso porta via macchine e tutto.
Sicily, Italy. Torrential rain have unleashed devastation flood across Sicily, leaving towns submerged, roads impossible, and thousands without. Palermo, Italy. A powerful storm swept through the Sicilian capital overnight, unleashed torrential rain, violent winds, and lifting parts and plunged parts of the city into chaos. The downpour, which began late Sunday, lasted several hours of flooded major roads, homes, and businesses across Palermo and nearly town. According to the Italy Severe Protection Agency, over 19 millimeters of rain fell in 2 hours. One of the hardest rainfall recorded in the recent years. The city and the drainage system was quickly overwhelmed, tuning main arteries with the Avola region, Sicily, and the fast-flowing rivers. Cars were seen drifting through the streets and emergency crews raising their rescue standing drivers. It was like a water flow pouring from the sky, said resident Giovanni Bianchi. Those ground flood apartment was submerged. I lived these 40 years and never seen a rain like this. Authorities reported dozens of emergency interests from the clearing fallen trees and rescue elderly residents trapped flooded buildings. Several neighboring, including Sierra Montseda and Partinico, suffered blackouts after lightning strikes damaged power lines. a matter of hour, violent downpour transformed streets into raging rivers, swept away cars and flooded homes from Palermo to Catania. Local officials described the event as one of the most intense storms in recent years. Firefighters conducted over 400 emergency operations overnight. Rescue restarted residents trapped in vehicles and basements. In Palermo, torrents of water surged through the historic center, flooded the city, main boulevard, Via Roma, and submerged parts of the central train station. It was like watching the sea evade the city, said residents. Maria Lombarda, close ground floor shop was destroyed within minutes. In Catania, severe flash floods overwhelmed the drainage system, while nearby villages such as Geri and Acrivale forced landslides that cut off entire communities. The regional civil protection agency issued a red alert. Italy highest warning level urged residents to stay indoors and avoid travel. Helicopters from the fire brigade were deployed to monitor rising river levels, particularly along the Semita rivers, where nearly overwhelmed these banks. Italy. This week, violent hailstorms struck parts of the northern and central Italy, unleashed golf ball-sized ice and town of transformed roads, vineyards, and city squares into frozen rivers. Described by meteorological as one of the most intense storms in the recent years, the disaster caused widespread damage to homes, vehicles, and agriculture, leaving residents tented it is set in fury. The hardest hit region were Lombardy, Emilia-Romagna, and Tuscany. In Bologna, hail shattered windows and damaged roofs. In Milan, a wide streets of ice-covered streets completely paralyzing traffic. Sudden flooding added the chaos, flooding emergency service with hundreds of rescue requests. Carlo Benedetti, a resident of Madeira, said it was terrified when in minutes the sky turned pitch black and 1,000 near rooms of ice were crashing down. The hailstorms with such force they shattered titles and dented cars' bodies on the streets. According to meteorological from the Italy Civil Protection Department, the storm was triggered by the violent collision between warm air from the Mediterranean and a cold front moving from the Central Europe.
I'd say so, Bob. This is a big storm.
Offering the lifeline in these terrifying times, agriculture sector and the backbone of Sicily economy is not immune to the storm impact. Orange in the field and inundated, posing to threat to groups of livelihood. Farmers already facing challenges in recent years are now too late to continue with the aftermath of this natural disaster. As the storm intensifies, rescue operations are underway to ensure the safety of residents trapped in the rising water. Emergency service blocked by the local volunteers to navigate in treacherous conditions to reach those in need. Evacuations are being carried out systemically, proportions to most vulnerable members of the community. Italy's government, in collaboration with the regional authority, is mobilizing rescue to address the crisis. Prime Minister Matteo Renzi has declared a state of emergency in Sicily, unlocking additional funds to rescue and in recovery efforts. The Italian Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations are also coordinated relief operations to provide essential supplies and support the affected communities. While the storm continued to batter Sicily, the resilience and solidarity in the people shine through. Neighbors are leading to helping hand and communities are coming together to face and change in person to natural disaster. A powerful storm hit Sicily. Italy, caused severe weather conditions that resulted in widespread destruction across the island. The storm, characterized by heavy rain, gale force winds, led to widespread flooding, power outage, and extensive damage to infrastructure. Local authorities report that the crises of Catania and Palermo have been hit by hardest hit. In Catania, streets turned into rivers, and water level rose in 3 drilling hearts. The historic city center, which usually turned to tourists, is now eerily quiet. Emergency service tried to cope with the field. Video shared on social media showed cars submerged and residents walking throughout the waist-deep water. The meteorological service has recorded widespread up to 100 km/h, which for the agriculture to station. Trees have been uprooted, roofs have been ripped off buildings, and debris is scattered to roadway, making the travel dangerous. The regional government has issued a red alert, urged residents to stay at home and avoid unnecessary travel. In Palermo, the storm led to similar extent to chaos. In local airport was temporarily closed due to flooding of runway, leading to flight cancellation and delays. As the sun rose over the devastation streets, scenes of resilience began to emerge. Volunteers from neighboring town arrived the shovels, pumps, and food supplies. In Catania, University standard formed human chain to help clear debris to home of elderly residents. Church bells rang in solidarity of many communities, helped nightly prayers to injure and displace it. One image of wet Sicily flag flying proudly over the flood town hall became a national symbol of strength. Local media called at a Rome and declared a state of emergency to obtain additional funds in the rescue to rapid reconstruction. Engineers are now installing bridges and roads, help workers to warn into possible communication flow to overflows, seen and standing water. Meteorologists at Avola, Italy say a storm system may be weakening the residual rains and extended to continue for several more days. The ground is standing with the water. Warning climatologist Dr. Elena Ferraro events tell additional rainfall could cause new floods and landslides. Environmental activists are calling this storm a wake-up call. This is not just a random error, said Lucia Marinel of Climate Italia. This is the result of decades of neglecting environmental policy of urban planning. We must change now. International support has begun to arrive the form of offer assistance from the European Union of neighboring countries. Italian celebrities, soccer players, and Pope have been experiencing this solidarity. Rome was hit by a sudden and violent hailstorm, which turned in the historic streets and Italian capital into the city rivers and caused significant disruption to normal life in the city. The storm, which hit late in the evening, blanketed the city with a hailstorm the size of walnuts, breaking windows, damaged cars, and injured dozens of residents and tourists. Within minutes, cobbled streets and famous squares were covered with a white blanket, created stains, more reminiscence of winter and autumn. Severe quickly overlapped caused flash flood that swept through the central area, including Trieste and Prati. Cars were stuck in ice-city water and abysses, and trams stopped while emergency service dealt with the debris. Rome Florence Airport reported delays after runway were temporarily covered in hail and lighting forces ground staff and suspended operations. Train service ended from Termini station was also severely disrupted, leaving hundreds of passengers stranded overnight. Hospitals treated dozens of people and injured from the fallen branches slapping on the sky streets and broken glass. It was terrible, said Lucia Bianchi, a local resident. The hailstones were so long and sounded like a bullet hitting the window. Video posted online showed streams of hail falling down the Spanish states and a fountain overflowing throughout the city. The storms also left a mark on agriculture, vineyard and olive groves around the Lazio. suffered significant damage, with the farmers reported crops losing just weeks before harvest. "For us, it is a disaster," said Marco Rossi, a farmer near Frascati. "Months of work were destroyed in half an hour." Meteorologists said the storm was caused a collision between most Mediterranean air and a cold front moving south, conditions increasingly associated with a climate instability. Experts warning that the Rome, like many southern Europe cities, is becoming increasingly vulnerable to sudden extreme weather events.
Assassini! Delinquenti sono! Delinquenti sono! Sono dei delinquenti! A muoversi questo tempo! Delinquenti!
Chaos and disbelief swept through the Italian capital as a ferocious hailstorm tore across Rome, blanketing streets in ice, flooding tunnels and leaving residents trapped in their cars and homes. The storm, which struck suddenly in the late afternoon, turned into Eternal City, into the witness described it as a frozen battlefield. Meteorologists said the event was triggered by a clash between the warm Mediterranean air and rapidly advanced Arctic front, a combination that prodded towering thunderstorm and the severe hail. Within moments, hailstorm the size of large coins plumped the city, shredded through windows and dented vehicles across entire neighborhoods. "I've lived in Rome and whole life I never seen anything like it," said 34-year-old Yale taxi driver Marco De Santis. The storm unleashed torrents in the city water through the several districts, including Trastevere, San Giovanni and Ossa, where drainage system was overwhelmed. Firefighters reported to more than 1,500 emergency calls, rescuing stranded motorists and pumped water from metro station and underground garage. Power cuts hit multiple areas, while traffic across A19 ring road ground to half an hour. Photos and videos shared online showed rivers of ice flowing through the incident, cobblestone streets and a half-building knee-deep around the famous landmark. The Trevi Foundation overflowed with a ruin of water, while parts of Via del Corso resembled glacier. This is a classic Mediterranean instability event, explained Dr. Elisa Conte from Italy's National Weather Service. His atmosphere were loaded in energy, and when it broke, a rainfall was explosive. A severe hailstorm swept across the northern Italy, battered cities from Milan to Bologna, with ice stones the size of a tennis ball and leaving a trail of destruction across the region. The storm, which broke out late on Wednesday evening, turned streets into rivers and the ice and causing chaos in that meteorologists describe it as one of the most severe hailstorms in the Italy's recent history. Residents of Lombardy and Emilia-Romagna described scenes of panic and thunder rumble overhead and a huge hailstorm pounded through cars and crops. "It felt like the sky was falling," said Franessa Rossi, a resident of Parma. "The noise was different. We thought the window would explode." Local authorities reported hundreds of emergency calls. Firefighters worked through the night and rescued stranded motorists to clear fallen trees. In Bergamo, entire neighborhoods were left without power, and strong winds and ice built up damaged power lines. According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm was part of the weather system moving across central city, Italy, where warm Mediterranean air collided vitally with a cold front from the northern Europe. It was an explosive mix, said meteorologist Giulia Bianchi. The sudden temperature drop triggered intense convection, prompting hail and unusual size of this time of year. Shops and restaurants in Trastevere accompanied forest separate flood with outdoor churches, terraces and markets still destroyed. Several hospitals reported minor injuries, mostly from the people slipping or brain stuck in fallen debris. It lasted barely 20 minutes, said cafe owner Eliza Romano, but the damages caused local like hurricane airspace. The storm aftermath left Rome's historic landmarks corroded in ice and a rail out in size. Tourists shaped photos to Colosseum and Spanish steps, gilding the under street slides, and the sea crews walked through the night to clear debris and restore normal traffic. Experts warn that extreme weather like this could become more frequent. Mediterranean storms are intensified due to climate change, said climatologist Dr. Lorenzo Conte. Rome may see more violent hail and flash flood in the recent heat. As a calm returned by morning, Romanos awoke the melted hail and the city shaking the yet another reminder to nature growing unpredictability. In dramatic turn of events, Sicily finds itself those in unprecedented storm as nature unleashed any fury upon the picturesque Italian island. We burst of the exclusive coverage and mythological spectacle deletion the impact of communities, infrastructure and the environment. As the storm approached Sicily, among the clouds gathering killing the tempest to unparalleled proportions. Coastal area forced to onslaught the fierce winds and torrential rains leading to widespread flooding in challenging conditions to both residents to emergency service. Our on-the-ground reported paint a vivid picture to be evacuated by the storm. The city of Palermo was transformed into rivers and water levels served submerged cars and tested to resilience to floodedness. The historic architecture withstood the test time to the faces of relentless onslaught of the wind of rain. Throughout the island communities are grappling with the power outage and the storm force caused significant damage to electrical infrastructure. Emergency shelters have been opened to provide refuge to those displaced by the storm. A powerful storm hit Sicily, plunging part of the Italian island into chaos as torrential rains, strong winds and flash floods swept through the cave skies, including Palermo, Catania and Messina. According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm dumped more than 120 mm of rain in just a few hours, nearly a month's worth flooding streets, collapsing roads and prompted dozens of evacuations. Emergency service responded more than 300 calls using helicopters to board the rescue trapped residents. In Palermo, dramatic footage showed cars flooding like toys and shops in the historic center of flooding. Giulia Romana, a 42-year-old local resident, said, "It was terrible. The water rushed into our house in a matter of minutes. The barrier had time to move the upper floor. Schools were closing in affected regions, and hundreds of people were left without power due to power outage." Authority also reported temporarily closed to Catania airport. The rail runway were flooded, caused delays and cancellations. Meteorologists explained the extreme weather conditions as a mitigant to rare Mediterranean hurricane formed by high sea temperature and unstable air masses. Sicily Civil Protection Chief Paolo Grasso warning on the increasingly unstable Mediterranean climate economy, warning from climatologists who said that the sea surface temperature, now about 27 Celsius, are contributed to the formation of more tropical cyclones now at the Mediterranean. Local media including Roberto Lagola of Palermo and Etnico Tragico of Catania have requested emergency funds of support from the national government. Cleanup efforts are ongoing with more than 1,400 civil protection volunteers and firefighters involved in the cleanup debris and draining flooded areas. Environmental torrential groups such as Ligabird and also in Italy in the speed that infrastructure urged, especially in the southern cities prone on flooding. Experts from the University of the Palermo know that 16% of region drainage system and outdated or inundated from the today extreme weather conditions. As Sicily begin in a powerful recovery, the message is clear. Climate disasters are no longer a distant possibility. They are not happening now with the devastating consequences. Rome was hit by unexpected and several hailstorms that covered historic capital with a layer of ice, creating several scenes to resemble weather rather than early autumn. The sudden storm swept through the city on Tuesday afternoon, disrupted traffic, flooding subway station and forcing prediction to seek shelter. Local authorities reported that hailstorms, some the size of a golf ball, fell in nearly 20 minutes, covering squares, roads and even areas around the Coliseum. Emergency crew were disrupted to clear brook drains after torrential rain mixing with the ice caused flash flooding in several low-lying areas. Public transport was severely affected, with the several metro lines temporarily suspended due to water ingress. Drivers described terrified moments where the visibility dropped to almost zero. It was like a sky was falling, and the hail bending to so loudly, and the roof in the car was where could hit each other, said the city resident Marco Rossi. Businesses in the city center rushed to protect their shop windows, while cafes and restaurants along the Via del Corso lost their outdoor sitting areas, which were destroyed with the hail. Social media quickly filled with the images of Rome cobbled streets turned into rivers and ice caused astonishment around the world. Meteorologists explained that the storm was caused of the sudden collision to warm Mediterranean air with a cold front and swept through the central Italy, an increasingly common pattern associated with the climate instability. Experts warned that such intense hailstorms are becoming more frequent in southern Europe. Despite the chaos, no serious injuries were reported, although dozens of people were treated in hospital to minor cars and businesses. The mayor of Rome urged residents to remain cautious, emphasizing the city's vulnerability to extreme weather events. For many Romans, the storm was stark reminder for the power of nature and the need to better preparedness in the era-changing climate realities.
Guardate ragazzi! Guardate un po'! Guardate un po' ragazzi! Sono un amico!
Late Tuesday night, a sudden hailstorm hit Rome, shocking the eternal city, and marble streets and historic squares were covered in ice. Residents described the storm as unexpected and terrified, with the hailstorm raged in the size from the marble of golf balls, smashed cars, breaking windows and damaged roofs. Central areas such as Trastevere, Piazza Venezia and Termini were hardest hit, with the later levels rising rapidly in low-lying areas. Passengers were stranded on bases in cars, while residents sought shelters. It was like a winter storm in the middle of summer, said Luca De Santis, owner of Cafe near Coliseum. Customers ran into the cafe screaming as hailstorms tore our umbrellas to pieces. The Italian fire service Valle de Fuoco received more than 300 emergency calls about flooded streets, fallen trees and damaged cars. Several metro stations, including Barbary and Repubblica, were temporarily closed due to water inside the tunnels. Authorities confirmed that at least 10 people suffered minor injuries after being hit by hail or slippery on ice sidewalks. The storm also disrupted air and sea traffic. Flights and Falconbelski airport were delayed and duty due to strong crosswind, and a ferry service connecting Sicily to Naples and Cagliari were temporarily suspended. Meteorologists from the Italy Air Force were the service explained that the storm was triggered by a low-pressure system moving North Africa, coated with warm air, humid air from the Mediterranean, apart from the intense fire due to rising sea temperatures. Local officials warning that more severe weather will follow. The storms are becoming stronger and more frequent, said Major Roberto Lagala. We must adapt our infrastructure and changing climate. By early morning, the storm has moved eastward, leaving behind the mud-stretched streets, debris at the damaged vehicles. Volunteers joined fighters in clear efforts with the local characters provided to aid families to lost belongings. This event noted Sacramento, how South Italy, in a front line of Europe's shifting climate where sudden storms, flash flood, and recovery heat waves are now part of daily life.